Hey, AfterBuzzers, we had quite the emotional week. Stay tuned as we pay tribute to Kristoff St. John.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey everybody, I'm Rachel Goodman here with a very emotional Young and the Restless. We are going to spend most of today honoring Kristoff St. John. That's what they, for anyone who's tuning in right now who didn't catch all the episodes this week, they had quite the memorial service to Neil Winters. We know Kristoff St. John passed away, and they honored Y&R honored him this week by paying tribute to the character's passing as well. So we're going to get to that in a second. Before we do, we did have an episode where we had a couple of things going on with the characters. So let's touch on that first, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show honoring Neil Winters and Kristoff St. John. Okay, so we had the society opening with Abby, and at first it wasn't looking like anyone was actually going to show up. And we didn't know what was going to happen. That's kind of where they left it last week. We opened up this week with the same thing. We had some drama with Lola and Kyle, especially after they left the society. They went home, and Kyle kissed Summer at the restaurant and didn't even care who was looking. Nick caught it and ended up telling Kyle that he didn't want him with his daughter anymore. And yeah, Kyle went home and ended up breaking up with Summer. At least that's how they left it for now. We haven't seen them since, but he officially broke it off with her, and it looks like he's going to get back with Lola. So after all that, Kyle broke his promise. I'm not really surprised. I'm surprised that it came to this, though. I thought they were going to stretch out the drama more and make Kyle more conflicted. That's the direction it seemed to be going about 2 weeks ago, but so far it looks like they're done. Then we had Ashley showing back up, and she's important to mention because she actually plays a really big role this week as we're watching the memorial. So I definitely want to mention everything going on with her and Jack. We know that they've been in this huge feud for a long time now, about a year or so, more than that. And she came back, and they were just kind of sparring back and forth. With Ashley still kind of like, yep, I am going to do this and this and this, and there's no way, like basically just saying that Jack was never going to get the patents, and that Jabot was she was going to make it very difficult for Jabot and do certain things to keep Jack from getting back in the game. So we kind of left it there with them. And we had Elena and Devon. They had a date at the society, and that was really sweet and endearing, especially with Devon starting to get over Hillary and move on with his life. All of this with the society leads into everything happening with Neil, which is Devon goes home. Like, he's calling Neil, like, hey, where are you? He goes back home. This is where the emotional part of the week really started. We know what Devon already found. Devon goes back to his house, to his apartment. He goes upstairs. It's kind of implied with music that he's found him passed away. And the way they handled this was the rest of the episode. There was no talking, no dialogue. It was just Devon going around. He goes back to he called somebody. He had a phone in his hand. He goes back to the society, and then when he's there, we see him telling Lily what's happened, and then Kane comes over and finds out, and it is just my husband and I were already starting to get teary-eyed, and this is before the funeral service. This is before the party afterward. Just from the news going around was very hard for us to watch. And what I was doing too as this was happening, I was doing a lot of research on the different actors and what they were saying about this week in particular and what it was like to film these episodes. And most of them, I have a couple of interviews I'm going to highlight and read through, but almost all of them said that when they were on screen filming this week about Neil, the character, that was actually them, and they were trying to be true to their characters, but they were also letting out emotions that pertained to the actual man, Kristoff St. John, who passed away. So with this in mind, as I was watching this week, it made it even harder because it was when Michelle Morgan's character Hillary died, it was hard to watch. Yes, it was. I teared up. The difference is that the actress didn't actually die, and so watching something like that where a fictional character has passed, yeah, it's hard because you're brought into the narrative. It's like you're experiencing it for real. But it's even harder when you know that the actor has passed away and that everyone else who's filming these scenes about his passing, it really felt like we were watching an actual funeral, because it wasn't, yes, like it was still Genoa City, but we were watching the cast's reaction to his passing, and it was a really hard thing. I'm really happy they did it this way, and it was a beautiful tribute to him, to both the character and the real person. But it was also hard to watch too, obviously. But a very, very heartfelt week. Before we get into that, let's just segue in and in honor of, as hard as this week was, it's an even more powerful. I feel I really should say thank you to everyone who watches. If there's nothing else that this week showed us, it's how powerful we are with each other and how meaningful our relationships are with one another. And I can't begin to say how thankful I am to have all of you guys watching every week and commenting. We already have a ton of comments in the chat. I am going to definitely give you guys a shout out and get to that in a moment. But I just wanted to thank you guys. You make us the ESPN of TV talk, and we are able to grow because of you. And it really means the world to all of us at AfterBuzz that you're here every week watching the show. That being said, it would be amazing if you guys could subscribe on YouTube, give us a rating on iTunes, leave a comment, anything. I will always give you a shout out live on the air for doing all of this. And I just want to say once again that you guys have made this a phenomenal experience for me. And I always get so excited coming in every week knowing that I'm going to get to talk about The Young and the Restless with everybody in the chat. So thank you for supporting us and for supporting what we love, too. That means the world to me and to everybody else here at the studio. Before we get to our next topic, let me tell you guys that we're going to open up the phone lines here. The number to call in is, let me grab that. It is, there we go, 424-354-8302. If you're listening live right now, it's April 28th, 2019, about 5:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to dial 424-354-8302, we are taking calls. This week, from here on to the end of the show, we're going to be talking about Neil Winters and everything that happened. So definitely, if you have anything to say about the actor or the character, feel free to call in. I would love to get your thoughts and to have a discussion about this with everybody who would like to be part of the show. Before I move on here, I'm just going to give a shout out to everyone in the chat, and then we'll jump in to the memorial. We have Hubby Joe, Alyssa Brown Carlton, we have Mary, Susan Russo, Rainey J, Miss Bubbles, Kimmy Sylvester. Mary says, I was in tears. They did a great job. Yeah, both Hubby Joe and I were in tears for most of this week. So they did an excellent job. And it just made it was so hard watching it because it was literally like they made it accessible for fans across. They made it accessible for all the YNR fans to be part of a funeral. That's what it felt like. Alyssa Brown Carlton, Summer is going to say she's pregnant. Oh, okay, yeah, I think so too. I think that's where that's going with their storyline. Rainey J, we will see vindication on Summer's part. Yeah, I agree. Rainy J, Devon coming down the stairs. Yeah. Broken hearts and crying emojis. Yeah. Hubby Joe, at Rainy J, totally exhausting. Oh, I think that's in response to the comment about Summer. Hubby Joe, at Alyssa Brown Carlton, I was crying also. Nita Smooches is here. Susan Russo, such a beautiful tribute week. Hubby Joe, the writing was amazing. I felt that I was at a funeral. It really did feel that way. Rainy J, Victor, Joshua, Daniel, Hillary, and Devon did a podcast with Michael Fairman. They did a great job detailing the rehearsals, etc. Yeah. So the thing is, when I was looking this up, they did this all in one take, and everyone was very surprised that they were able to do it in this way, but it's kind of the way that they're set up is that they had to. We had specifically, it was Shamar Moore. He is on SWAT, as most people probably know, and he was saying that if SWAT had to do it the same way that Y&R did with this, he was like, yeah, no, it would not have happened that way. So the fact that Y&R was able to do this whole memorial in like one take. They didn't have to actually just cut and keep going. They literally did it in one take and they were done and it was good to go. So then it's almost like in that sense too, we got the real response from all of these actors, not something that had been rehearsed a million times. And that's the other thing. As in the acting world, it's usually they will have you do take after take after take, and it's hard on that 10th take to show raw emotions that you might not have in you anymore after 10 takes. But that's the whole thing, is that this scene wasn't rehearsed really. It was just, they were just able to get up there and do it, and just showing these emotions as real as they are. Miss Bubbles, Eileen Davidson must have taped several weeks of material during her few days. I wonder how much longer she will air. Nita Smooches, they did a great tasteful job on the memorial. Rainy J, oh yeah, she was on the podcast as well. Doolaman, hey family, best week ever. We have Rodelli DeMille here. Sad for Neil and Kristoff. We have Haywood Wong. Shamar Moore coming back was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. Todd Beaton, this is so sad. Alyssa Brown Carlton, wow, that's amazing about the one take. It makes it so much realer. And then Rodelli DeMille says, all the actors were fantastic. Loved Lily, Devon, and Shamar. Yeah. So let's get into the actual memorial and talk about everything that happened. There was a lot. So we had Lily getting up first. And the first time she stood up, she could not. And she just started crying, and it was just, we know she just got back from jail, and Neil was the one who had moved upstate with her and was there for her, and was seeing her more than anyone else, especially after everything going on with the divorce or the divorce in progress, I should say, with Kane. So just for Lily to lose him when at this very moment we knew that Neil was her rock. And we saw, like during this whole week too, we saw a flashback between Lily and Neil where a couple times she got into trouble and he was always there for her and was always telling her it was okay. And she also stressed that Neil never made her feel bad for the mistakes that she made, and he never yelled at her. He just was always there for her. And she couldn't say anything at first. She did try, but then when she got back down, that's when Malcolm, Shamar Moore, he got up and he started talking about everything. And I'm just going to give highlights of what was said, because all of them gave some very strong statements about Neil and about the relationship with him and about what he brought to the community. And the thing is, as they were saying these things about Neil, I was thinking, okay, I bet they're actually talking about Kristoff. And when I Googled it, yeah, I Googled Daniel Goddard and I Googled Shamar Moore about this specifically, and they both said the same thing, that everything they were saying was actually, it wasn't even just about Neil, it was about Kristoff St. John too. And so Neil got up and he said that he was like, Malcolm got up, not Neil. Malcolm got up and said that Neil would have given an epic speech and that it would have been full of corny jokes. He said, I miss you. I owe you so much. I love you. Everywhere he goes, Malcolm said everywhere he goes, he hears his brother. Malcolm then kissed his hand up to the sky. And there's this whole week too, and I love how they do this on YNR. Whenever anyone passes away, there's a spiritual element to the person as well, so that it almost feels like, like they're not here anymore. But YNR always does the character justice by allowing us to feel like, no, they might not physically be here anymore, but they're never gone, and we're never gone. And it just, they did this with Hillary too. And anytime a character might either is passing away or has passed, they always allow us to feel that that person is still here watching over the family and that they're not really gone. And that was when Malcolm kissed his hand up to the sky. I just thought that was an excellent tribute to that and to the hope that Neil Winters and Kristoff St. John, that their love is still with us, even if they're not physically with us anymore. Shamar Moore, I wanted to read his Instagram post as well, because he went on to say exactly what I was talking about with basically Neil Winters and Kristoff St. John being one and the same to him. Shamar Moore's post reads, "Tomorrow morning on Young and the Restless, you will see and hopefully feel my heart on the screen. Malcolm talking to Neil, Shamar talking to Kristoff. They are one and the same, brothers both on and off the screen. To pay tribute to Kristoff with these next few episodes of YNR was an incredible honor. I truly hope you tune and see and feel just how much he was loved by us all. The emotions you will see and feel are all real from all of our YNR family. Hashtag never forgotten. Hashtag Young and the Restless. Hashtag Kristoff St. John." So that was beyond, it wasn't even just that the actor got up, and it wasn't even just hearing Malcolm as the character saying those things about Neil, but to read that post from Shamar Moore, just so many people in the community have talked about Kristoff as well and said that not only was he an excellent actor, but he was an excellent person and a good human being too. There's one story in particular I'm thinking of where he went down. He was with a group of people and he was traveling around, and they went to Georgia for just like I think publicity. And instead of all these fans noticed him, and instead of Kristoff St. John telling the fans to, like, okay, cool, goodbye, like maybe a typical actor or actress would do, especially someone that famous, instead of being like that, Kristoff St. John would actually start talking to them, and by the end of the conversation, they would be talking about that person's family. And that's the way he treated them. Wasn't just like a fan, but as if everybody was part of his family. And so there was this love around him. As much as he struggled, he was full of love toward other people. And so it's just to see Shamar talking off screen like this, it's just as powerful as seeing the tribute this week. Hubby Joe says, "You were able to feel that they were not acting. They were talking from their hearts." Miss Bubbles, "I could take or leave the actress who plays Lily. However, it was sad when she realizes she's an orphan. That was powerful insight. She officially lost the last keys to her childhood." Yeah. And that was another mention they made, that Neil was up in heaven with Drusilla. So I loved that touch. As sad as it is, it made it even more powerful. Alyssa Brown Carlton, especially Neil, he was Lily's rock. Rainy J, Lily is so shook up. I saw Money's episode already, and she is really hurting, yeah. And that's, Lily's had a lot of things happen this year to her. I can't even imagine being in jail for a prolonged amount of time, and then suddenly you get out. But as soon as you do, somebody passes. Grief is not easy. It doesn't matter sometimes it doesn't even matter how well you knew or didn't know a person. Grief affects everybody in different ways. And so for her to lose somebody that close to her, it's very understandable that, like, how do you process something like that, especially when you've been through so much? And we don't even know the extent of what she went through in jail. We know she had to be moved because they were, some inmates were giving her a hard time and attacking her. We don't know what else could have happened, and we just don't know exactly. She was a changed person anyway, let alone to lose her rock when she probably needed him more now than ever, especially as she transitions back into normal society again. Todd Beaton loved that Jack and Ashley came back together. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that in a second. Before we do, there's one more interview I wanted to highlight, and that's the one that Daniel Goddard did. He was, TV Insider was interviewing him about the passing of Kristoff St. John, and as I was reading this, I felt like it was definitely worth sharing. So let me just read some of this, and then we'll move on to the rest of the tribute. Okay. So while planning its episode to honor Kristoff St. John, The Young and the Restless asked the late star's longtime friend, Stan Shaw, this was something else, to step in as the pastor who will lead the funeral for Neil Winters. So that was another thing worth mentioning, is that the pastor giving the funeral was actually a good friend. And they specifically requested him to step in as that role since he knew Kristoff very well. Okay, so there's that. And then we also had the interview with Daniel Goddard, and he said that, the question was, how do you think episodes will help viewers deal with the loss of Kristoff? Daniel Goddard said, first, I'm still in shock. Kristoff died on my wife Rachel's and my wedding anniversary. We were celebrating when we found out. I still can't wrap my head around it. Brighton James, who plays Devon Hamilton, and I were very good friends with Kristoff. The last few years, we experienced the loss he went through with his son, Julian, which was very deep for him. It was difficult. There's a part of us that's at peace knowing he's at peace. Then there's another part where I still can't believe it's happened. I know a lot of fans feel the same way. The condolences I've seen are so honest and heartfelt. When you have someone in your house on your favorite show that you watched for decades, you've still lost someone close to you, even though it's in a different way. A lot of fans never met Kristoff, but they feel like they know him. I think the episodes will start to help with people's healing. The script was only 39 pages long. Usually they're much longer. We had a talk as a family, which is what the show is. They told us if we want another take to do it. We all did it in one take. Everything you see was done one time. There was no one single hiccup. And then he goes on to talk about the difference between when Gene Cooper passed away and how everyone handled that, and which we all know Gene Cooper is Katherine. Basically, Daniel Goddard went on to say that the difference with Jean is that she had the gift of living a longer life. And so when she passed, he said that they kind of watched it naturally, and that her mind was sharp until the end, but her body was starting to, she was starting to get older. Whereas losing Kristoff St. John was much more sudden, and it's been harder for the cast to kind of process this, harder for fans in general to process this because Kristoff was so young. But it sounds like everyone coming together as a family has definitely helped with this process and his passing. They're also, for anyone who wasn't aware of this, they've been advertising on Monday. They're doing another talk I think this is separate from the podcast that they were talking about in the chat, but they're doing another talk on CBS on Monday in order to honor Kristoff St. John. So if anyone didn't know about it, definitely check it out if you're interested. It looks like they have the entire cast of YNR as well as former cast members who were no longer on the show. So, okay. We have a couple other people to mention here. We had Devon getting up during the funeral. He basically said it was hard for me. Devon gave one of the speeches that really affected me the most, because his speech was, when you get somebody in your life who says they're going to be by your side and they won't give up on you no matter what, it's everything in the world and it changes you. His love is in my heart and I know it will always be there. And as they're all talking, we saw Nikki crying. Eric Braden, Victor, he got up and he was crying, and it didn't feel like I was looking at actors. It actually seemed like people were really getting up and giving an actual eulogies at a real funeral. Especially the way that they were referencing the photo of Kristoff St. John that they had up on the podium. It felt too real for this to have been, even though it was scripted, even though they had lines, the emotion was real and the lines felt real too. So then Lily got up one more time and she gave a very interesting eulogy. It wasn't like anyone else's. It was basically, I don't know if I'm ever going to be okay. And she got up and said how unfair it was that she lost him at his age, and that it wasn't, she wasn't ready to lose him. And she said, I'm scared, I'm going to feel this way forever. And that's something for all of us who have lost somebody, that is a very common way for someone to feel, because you don't know how long the grief is going to last. If it's going to be forever, you just don't know what the process is going to be like. And for Lily to recognize that, it was very refreshing to hear her take on it, to see somebody who gets up on the stand and they're not, obviously everyone else who got up there, they felt like they had to pretend to be okay on some level. Not that they are okay, but they had to put up, not an act, but they had to, for the rest of the people in the congregation, they had to act stronger than probably how they're really feeling. We know Devon is not as he's very broken up about it too, but he's kind of reserved that for when he's alone. But when Lily got up there, she didn't try to hide it. She just got up and she showed everybody that she wasn't okay, and that's okay too. That it's okay, and that's, I think, one of the most powerful things that I took away from this week was Lily getting up there and showing us raw emotion and showing us that when you lose somebody so suddenly, you don't have to be okay at first. You can break down. You can break down in front of people. It's human emotion, and it's normal, and it's natural, and it's hopefully going to bring her one step closer to being okay one day when she is in the place where she can be. Doolman, this week broke my heart. Rainy J, oh man, that's horrible. Daniel will be celebrating grieving every year. Yeah. Todd Beaton, oh, okay. Yeah, we read that comment already. Alyssa Brown Carlton, my friend lost her dad last year, really tragically, and it still affects her every day. Yeah, and see, exactly. And I know people too who, when you lose someone so suddenly, especially suddenly, it's hard because you didn't get the closure that someone else might have gotten. Not that there's ever an easy way to lose somebody, because there's not, but if someone was terminally ill and you knew they were going to pass away and you were there and you were able to spend time with them before they passed, it's completely different than when somebody is here with you normal one day and then the next they're gone. It's just not an easy thing. It's never an easy thing to lose someone, but it's especially hard when someone passes so tragically and so suddenly and you still have things that you wish you could have said to that person. Miss Bubbles, it's been rumored a new actress was cast in an unnamed role that could be a recast, because they're talking about Lily and how she's leaving. So possibly that's what's going to happen. Rainy J, I think Brighton James is pretty much like Devon in real life. Yeah, I feel the same way. He does feel like he's the same person, especially if you've seen him on like Family Matters and other shows. Doolman, I think Devon should change his last name to Winters in honor of Neil. That would be a very nice tribute to Neil. So let's just touch on a couple more things here. After the funeral, everyone went back to Devon's place. There was a very nice party. Anna was singing a lot, and one of the things that I didn't mention was that for the funeral, before we even got to all the eulogies, Anna was singing Amazing Grace, and that's how we were brought into this. As everyone was getting ready, we heard Anna singing. After the funeral, she sings again, and we get some touching moments, and everyone agreeing that this was really Malcolm saying that Neil wouldn't want them to be hurting. So they ended up singing and just trying to be happy in light of the situation. And we got to see some flashbacks too, and that was one of them that I mentioned earlier with Lily. We saw a few that Neil had with Devon. We saw some with Malcolm too, and I did not watch the show when Malcolm was on, so it was very interesting to see everything going on with that, and to see Victoria was there with Billy, and that I actually did not know that Victoria and Neil had once been engaged. And I looked up that storyline. I saw that there was a baby involved, Eve, who she'd had with Cole, but then the baby passed away. But the point is that everyone was touched by Neil, and that Victoria was engaged to him, and so she had a very deep connection to him. We just got to see how he affected everyone. Ashley was there. After this, like Todd Beaton mentioned, when Ashley went to the funeral and when she was talking to Jack, this tragic moment made Jack and Ashley realize that they should put the feud to the side and that they should somehow make things work. So I don't know what that's going to turn into, if it's actually going to come to fruition that they're going to be okay with each other. But because we've seen tragedy hit them before, and they were okay for a little bit and then they weren't. But as of right now, it did bring Jack and Ashley back onto amicable terms, and it seemed like they're going to just put all the fighting to the side. But I feel especially bad for Ashley because we know she was involved with Neil before she decided to leave, and that he really seemed like he wanted to be with her. And then she left, and I remember him saying to her, "Are you sure you're going to leave?" Because he was clearly sad about it and didn't want her to go. And it sounds like, from what Ashley's saying, that was the last time she ever really talked to him before she went to Paris. And now she's in this place where, okay, well, I'll never know what could have been. And that's hard too, because when you've dated somebody who's passed away, or when it's somebody even dated, been friends with, somebody who was in your life, and you always meant to call them again or to get back in touch, and now you can't ever do it again. I feel like this will haunt Ashley for a long time too, just because she never really got to say goodbye to him either. Doolaman, I remember when Victoria and Neil were engaged. Maxwell Comics Inc. Neil was good with Victor, so that's weird. LOL. I think he's responding to something else. This conversation goes up a little bit. Okay, here we go. Maxwell Comics, this is where it starts. I'm shocked Victoria went since she kissed Lily's man. That's a very interesting way of putting it. Alyssa Brown Carlton, I had no idea him and Victoria were together. Maxwell Comics, yeah, same interesting matching her and Neil. Doolman, the flashbacks reminded us of how much Neil touched everybody's lives. Rainy J, Neil even once kissed Nikki, but that was a joke, LOL. Yeah, that would be weird, especially, I mean, not putting it past them, considering we've already seen mothers and daughters sharing the same man, but it would be kind of weird to have Victoria and Neil engaged and then suddenly he has a thing with Nikki. That to me would be odd, but I wouldn't put it past them on the soap to have done that. Miss Bubbles, yeah, allegedly the Neil and Victoria storyline was in the late 90s and was stopped because of the interracial backlash. Oh, I did not know that. I was not watching back then, so all I've seen is what they showed with the flashbacks, but seems like a good time to, go out on YouTube and see what other, older YNR episodes they've shared in his honor to go back and catch up on some Neil Winters from the 90s. Heather Tom was playing Victoria back then, Todd Beaton says. Okay, cool. Well, that's good to know. Okay, so the last thing to mention about this, and then we'll get to our law moment. The last thing to mention is at the very end of all of this, they took, after everyone who wasn't like direct family left, Malcolm had, he had like a professional camera sitting on a tripod, and he had it take a photo of the Winters and the Neil, and he basically, Lily's family, we had Malcolm, and just, the direct family. They took a family portrait of them all holding Neil's picture, which I thought was a really nice touch and a memory that I'm sure they're going to love having forever. And then at the very end, they kind of set it up. We switched gears a little bit here, and we went into Victor and Nikki and that storyline that started at the beginning of the week where Victor almost told her something, but then he got the call about Neil. At the end of the week, we go back to that, and Victor says to Nikki that he's working on something, and now more prudent things have come up, and so he can't tell her what happened, what he was going to tell her, but he assured her he was going to be okay, and he left. To kind of segue here a little bit, we know that we've heard that Adam's been recast, and he's coming back, and that's what all of us have kind of predicted is happening here with Victor, but he won't tell Nikki yet, so we're going to have to find out next week what happens with that. So just before we get to our law moment, and yes, there is a law moment somehow. I didn't think there was going to be, but there is one from Victor. Before we move on, just to pay one last, piece of respect to Kristoff St. John. It's very, it's just very obvious. Like it's very, let me backtrack here. It's very tragic to lose somebody so young. But it's also very wonderful how everyone came together over his passing and to see the love that spread across YNR, and not just with YNR, but the community in general. It wasn't just YNR, it was so many different people who were friends with him stepped up from other shows. They stepped up and just, they had so much love to show this person. And so just wanted to end it there. To pay that last respect to him before we kind of wrap this up. And when we, I'm going to try to watch The Talk on Monday. So after that comes on, I'll definitely have some things to touch on with that as well. Let me just see if anything else anyone else had anything to say in the chat. Maxwell Comics, it's good to know that in the show, Hillary and Neil are together again. But sad to know Kristoff St. John is gone forever. Yeah, and that was it. So on that note, let's get to our law moment. The only thing I had to say was in the beginning when Victor, before we actually had the funeral, Victor was talking to, he was just talking in general about Neil. And he goes, Neil was a man's man. And I laughed. And that was it. I did not think we were going to do Law Moment this week because of the circumstances and because this was a tribute. But it just goes to show that even in a very tragic moment, people come together and there can still be humor and there can still be laughter and there can still be love and happiness in light of a very sad situation. On that note, let's get to our predictions. Okay.
Now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So we didn't have too much going on this week outside of the funeral. Not to say that that's not a lot going on, but in terms of the content of what was happening in Genoa City, we had everything going on with Summer and Kyle. Obviously, they're done. We had someone earlier saying that they think that Summer's going to try and say she's pregnant. I definitely could see that happening. I either see it going that route, or I see Kyle going with Lola and then realizing he loves Summer. And then that's the problem, because he did tell Jack that he feels connected to both of them. And that seemed to be the hang up there. So I don't see, unless Kyle was lying to Jack or he just did a 180, I don't see that being something that just disappears, that he no longer feels that way about Summer. So I feel like that might be where they go with it, but we'll see. And then the other thing with Victor is, like I mentioned earlier, I think that he's going back to Las Vegas because he's doing something with Adam, and I think he found him. And I think the reason why Nikki found something with a psychologist is because maybe Victor found him and he's been having him see a psychologist to kind of get Adam to work through wherever he's been the last couple of years. Okay, I'm just checking in with the chat one more time before we wrap for today. Todd Beaton, Victoria and Michael were a couple. Maxwell Comics Inc. Neil was a man's man. Yeah. Doolaman, I lolled when Nick said Neil kicked his butt in b-ball. And then Maxwell Comics also adds a woman's man about Neil. I think that was mentioned too, but first Victor said a man's man in his accent. Rainy J and Nikki's answer afterward, and a ladies' man. Right. Okay, that's what happened, was that Victor said a man's man, and then Nikki's like, yep, can't forget a ladies' man. Maxwell Comics Inc. says, what's going to happen with Summer and Kyle? I think Summer is going to take revenge. She won't go down without a fight. Someone's going to get hurt emotionally and physically. Yeah, she is Phyllis's daughter after all. Rodelli DeMille, there's a tribute video on Victoria Rao's page for Kristoff. Good to know. Maxwell Comics, if Adam comes back from the dead one more time, he better not die again for 50 years. And then Hubby Joe, law moment. Mia trying to get into the club. Oh, we forgot all about her. How could I forget Mia? Gee, I don't know. Can you sense the sarcasm? Yeah, that was funny though. Mia trying to get into the club and, well, at first failing. Then she gets in and, I'm just done with Mia drama at this point. I think that's a good place to end and, wrap for the week. Thank you again for joining this heartfelt week. My name is Rachel Goodman. You can find me on Twitter at Rach Goodman, or if you go over to our Facebook page, not group, you can go to @RestlessRap, and we are always there, open for discussion and comments, and I'll always read whatever you say live on the air the following week. So until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in. This has been one heartfelt, emotional roller coaster ride of a week, but I am glad that you guys tuned in and joined me for this. Thank you. Bye. Have a great week.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.